My name is Rod Stanhope. I work for the Tennessee Valley Authority. It's my great pleasure to serve as the chair of the Energy and Transition and Expansion Forum, and we are really, really glad that you're here. There will be a sign-in sheet that circulates sometime in the next hour or so, so please put your name on there, email address, so that we can stay in contact and let you know the next steps and the ways that you can stay involved and get involved. Recognize a lot of familiar faces that have been involved, and we appreciate you and your support. I want to cover one thing really quickly. I wish I had 30 minutes to do this, but I don't. I've got 2. So Bob Weibel is retiring, and he has been instrumental for keeping this thing, first of all, for kicking this thing off and keeping us between the navigational beacons. And he is invaluable, was invaluable. And Bob, please travel safe. We know you have to get out, but your legacy is all over this thing, and we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to cover a quick safety topic, and then I'm going to give you a rundown of the agenda, and then we're going to get right into it. And I just had a call from one of my colleagues, and he said, "How's everything going?" And I said, "It's going great." He goes, "What are you the most anxious about?" And I said, "Well, I got to give the safety topic. It's usually not a big deal, but I'm a little." He goes, "Oh, what you got?" And I told him about it, kind of walked him through it. Dead silence, and he says, "Oh boy, that's high risk with low reward." I was like, "Thanks, man. Appreciate you. I'm so glad you called." And so then I got to thinking, I got academics in here, I got industry experts, I got construction hands. It's like, man, they can handle this complex topic. So I wanted to go country music for you, but I couldn't, so I went the next best thing, stayed in the South. Let's talk about Waffle House. Do you think about Waffle House as being a project organization? I would challenge you that they run more projects in one day than you've ran in your career. Every time someone walks through the door, they've initiated a project. When they study a menu, they're in the design phase. They execute the project, they have a turnover, and then they have a closeout. Multiple times a day. A lot of things we can learn from them. If you've ever been to a Waffle House in the rush of the day or even at the night when the bar's let out, that's when their processes and their tools and their training are best. That's what they're there for. They follow procedure, they lean heavily on procedure. They have different tools that are baked in, probably from lessons learned. On the bottom right photo, you'll see a small square on the tile there, 1 square. Anybody know what that's for? That's where they call out the order. The cook will not register the order if they're not in the square. I've seen them straddling it. No way, got to be in the square. There's 1 square, that way there's no multiple orders coming at once. There's 3-way communication. I like a waffle on 2. It means 2 waffles. The cook pulls 2 plates, puts 2 butter packets. That's his reminder. I'm going to put waffles there. It's feedback to the server. He knows what I've asked for. I don't have to follow up. He's sending feedback, and the server says, okay, he's got it. Repeat the process. 3-way communication. Not verbal, but there's 3-way communication there. On the bottom left photo, that's that little system. I have no idea how it works, but I've watched it. I study it. I still don't know how it works. It's pretty intriguing. That's 2 a.m. in the morning when it's full of drunks, the ones you see on YouTube, or 7 a.m., 8 a.m. on Saturday mornings. Okay, now go back at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. There's no process. Dishes are stacked. The wait staff is sitting in a booth on their phone. You walk in and they look at you like, what are you doing here? Like, is the grill hot? Can I get something? They don't go to the square. That's when the mistakes happen. Complacency. Same way in our projects. We've got known work, we're going into outage, we prep, we have procedures. It's those one-offs that get us in trouble. Complacency kills. We heard earlier in the week about finding calmness in the chaos. Brilliant, brilliant presentation. Same way, we're comfortable there. That's what we've trained for. I challenge you to go back to your project teams and make sure when you have these one-offs, non-routine efforts, make sure that we're leaning into our procedures and our training. All right? Wasn't too bad, right? You guys follow that one? I'll have to give feedback to the guy. Thank you. All right, so what we want to do today is we're going to give you a brief objectives of the forum. Bruce Long with Southern's going to walk you through the journey, how we got here today, what we've done, why we're here. We're going to turn it over to Nate next. He's going to moderate this panel. I'm going to wait and let him do the intros. And then we're going to have Mr. Dan Farr come up and close this out. Quickly and briefly, Dan is catching nuggets as they happen today, so he can tie those in, and he's going to tell you about the next steps as well. During the panel, Bruce and I will be floating around in the audience with a microphone. This is very informal, but it's very interactive. We want you guys to provide feedback and ask questions. So with that, welcome. Thank you so much, and Bruce Long.
Well, I can honestly say I've never heard a safety topic about Waffle House. That's a first. That was of high value, in my opinion.
Remember that one.
I will. Might borrow it. So I'm here to kind of frame up the problem or the challenges that are occurring in the power industry right now. And quite frankly, Brian Williams is a really hard act to follow because he did a fantastic job stealing my thunder yesterday and really framing this well. So I'll try to kind of hit on a few other things, expand on what he was talking about. I will never forget his comments around, we put a man on the moon before we put wheels on a suitcase. That's lasting. And nuclear fusion is the energy source of the future, and it always will be. So those two very lasting things he said. So energy and transition. So there's really two dynamics that are converging at the same time around energy. So there's energy and transition. And it's all about changing the generation mix from traditionally coal and high carbon content type generation to other types of generation with far less carbon footprint, and all the rules and regs and things that drive you to different types of generation. And then when you change that generation source, then you've got to change the transmission to move that power to its load and consumers. So that was happening already, and that was happening through a normal regulated process that's very slow and arduous and it's kind of a traditional path. Then came the disruption, and that was energy and expansion. So large load customers, primarily data centers, but not just data centers. It was Rivian car EV plants, battery manufacturing plants. There's a lot of industrial growth right now in a lot of our utility sectors. That coupled with the hyperscalers and the data centers, that load growth is just exploding. So those two dynamics are converging at a macro level to create all these challenges and opportunities that exist in the market. So what are some of those challenges? And I suppose I need to flip to the proper slide. So some of the challenges, the biggest one is speed to market. These energy centers and hyperscalers are rushing to market with these assets. So things that used to take you 6, 7, 8 years to develop and build, they want in 2, 3, 4 years, and the speed at which they want to move is remarkable. So that's putting strains on our legacy project delivery processes, strains on all types of resources, whether they're engineers or construction craft professionals, supply chain. We've all heard ad nauseum about all the supply chain woes that we have right now. So connecting that back to CII, what are some of those best practices that we got to rethink and maybe reinvent what the new world looks like for front-end planning and contract strategies and those different types of best practices. Then digital transformation. As you know, AI, part of a lot of the topics we're talking about at the conference this week is a transformative thing, and it will impact the E&C industry, there is no doubt. And so what does that digital transformation really look like? How do you plug in and take advantage of what's coming? And then benchmarking and learning from other industries and learning how to become more efficient and adapt to this new environment that we're in. This is a graphic that this is another challenge and dynamic, is the cost of building these facilities. So this came from Scott Madden. I'll give them credit for this slide. It actually was in the NextEra Q1 earnings call packet. So it was also part of NextEra's presentation in Q1. If you look at the far right, what natural gas combined cycles are costing, and this is real, we have data that backs this up to something that was completed right around the start of COVID to what we need to be working on now and finishing by 2030 is 3x more expensive per kW, and that's a remarkable escalation in cost. And so with all this demand comes increased cost, and so that's another dynamic that's really impacting the market right now. The other dynamic is these hyperscalers, and we're starting to see that in the Virginia area where there's probably the earliest data centers built. You would think that data center would come up and it would just run at flat load all the way across. That's not the case. They tend to fluctuate quite a bit. So they kind of jerk the grid around a bit with dropping load, needing fast ramp load back up, and it's creating some major challenges in the grid. So how do you build things into the grid that stabilizes that and make sure we maintain grid stability as we add more and more of these hyperscalers to the grid? So with that, I'll kind of tee up some of the conversation today. Maybe that stimulates some of your questions. And I will turn it over to Nate Nix for the panel.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce. Rod. So it's my pleasure to sit with these industry leaders from contracting, consulting, and certainly from the utilities. I'm going to give an introduction, but before I do, just a reminder on how we're going to organize this. This is a bit different than what you've been seeing all week. This isn't a presentation. This is a panel. It's a discussion. We want you to engage in it too. So Rod and Bruce are going to be out there with microphones. As you can see on the screen, there's 5 topics for the panel discussion. So our intent is to go through a couple questions in each topic here with the panel and invite the rest of you to participate, asking any additional questions that you might have in mind. Good? All right. So I'll start here on this end and work my way to that end. So first, have Paul Burrows. He's Vice President of Renewable Generation Major Projects at Ontario Power Generation. There he leads a diverse portfolio of clean energy projects aligned with OPG's vision of electrifying life in one generation. Paul brings deep expertise in engineering, project delivery, and stakeholder partnerships. He's played a key role in some of Canada's most significant renewable developments, including a $2.5 billion lower Matagami River project and the Peter Sutherland Generation Station, both delivered in collaboration with Indigenous partners. Paul also serves on the Construction Industry Institute's Board of Advisors and is a past chair of the Executive Committee, where he champions innovations and collaboration in capital project delivery. Next to Paul, we have Mike DeBrail, for clarity, I'm going to go with Michael, because we have another Mike on the panel. So Michael DeBrail. Michael is a managing partner at PTAG, leading capital project transformations across energy generation and transmission, mining, and heavy infrastructure sectors. He's global expert in advanced project delivery and integrated project delivery, with deep experience in front-end planning, risk management, and collaborative contracting. Michael helps owners navigate complexity and speed on mega projects through disruptive methods such as AWP, PPM, lean, and integrated project governance innovations, leading to faster and more successful projects. Next to Michael is Roger Waltrip. Roger serves as Vice President of Major Projects in Generation Projects and Fleet Services at Tennessee Valley Authority. He leads the delivery of complex non-nuclear generation projects, including simple and combined cycle gas plants and utility-scale solar, supporting TVA's transformation toward a more flexible, resilient energy system. Roger oversees a portfolio of projects totaling up to $3 billion annually. His team manages the full life cycle of new generation, from planning and siting to EPC execution and warranty closeout. Roger is a key contributor to TVA's resource and solar strategy teams and is known for driving disciplined, scalable approaches in project delivery in rapidly evolving energy landscape. And then lastly on the panel, we have Mike Wagner. Mike serves as the Managing Director of Transmission and Distribution Engineering, Procurement, and Construction at Burns & McDonnell. He oversees a portfolio of large-scale transmission and substation projects across North America with diverse background that spans the trades, project delivery, and executive leadership. Mike focuses on modernizing how infrastructure is planned and built through collaborative contracting, digital execution strategies, and high-performance teams. He's actively engaged in industry efforts to meet the moment of load growth, grid expansion, and a clean energy transition with practical, scalable solutions. All right, thank you guys for participating in the panel.
Thank you.
Super.
So we're going to start the conversation on the topic of what is the expansion, the transition in our industry. So first question I'm going to direct to you, Paul. Load growth. It's growing faster than expected. This is due to surging demands from hyperscale data centers and AI, reshored manufacturing, EVs, and other electrification. What's the biggest barrier to delivering the capacity needed?
I think first off, the biggest barrier was that the recognition that the load's growing. And I think you heard yesterday from Brian from TVA that we're seeing it in real time now. In Ontario, the Independent Electricity System Operator has been doing banded predictions for a few years now, and originally their prediction was quite stagnant. To date, their most recent one has us almost doubling the system, about a 75% growth by 2050. So they've, even from the system operator, they've recognized this growth. We've seen it for a long time. So we've been readying ourselves as a company, but now we're seeing it across the industry. They're recognizing this is coming and we need to address it. The second constraint or obstacle we need to overcome is people. And you're probably going to hear me say it many times over today, but developing the people that we need, both from our vendor partners, contractors, suppliers, and our company itself, engineers, people that can run projects. The experience is going out the door, and we need to get the experience back in and develop people faster than we've ever developed them before. So I see that as an obstacle or constraint, and an opportunity for those of you starting out in the industry to have a 30, 40-year career again building stuff, and we all like building stuff here. On the more hard side, it's the capital constraints. You need to have a strong balance sheet to build the billions of dollars of assets that are being asked of us. And you need partnerships along with that to spend that much money. But from OPG's perspective, we need to be strong operationally to have that foundation, to be a good operator, strong balance sheet, and that allows us to leverage our capital strength to build the future. And bringing in the partners with government, partners with our vendor partners. We partner with Indigenous communities on these projects. So the money is coming from a variety of different areas, but it's a massive amount of money. When you're talking building 40, 50 gigawatts of capacity, it's quite large.
Thank you, Paul. Roger, I guess as the other utility representative here, wanted to get your insights as well.
Yeah, we have some of the same problem, the recognition that the load is growing. I started in this group in 2007, and we had a project per year hitting the grid 2010 through 2015. We got one project into that, and 2010 happened. and we didn't build any of the rest of them. And so for a decade, we forecasted flat to declining growth. LED light bulbs were going to save the world, all of those things. Well, later into the teens, we're pressing hard for, we've got to do something else. But through the teens, the only new builds we had were replacing closing coal. So we built, the first one was true growth. We built 3 more combined cycles that were barely break even with closing coal. And so going into the late teens, the recognition of this is growing, we need to start some projects. But we had a 5-year gap that we closed more coal but didn't build any gas. And so we launched some projects in 2019 with Burns and McDonnell, and those went commercial in 23 and 24, but it's a slow spool up. But that recognition that it's growing was part of the problem. The other thing, we have limited capacity, and I think pretty much the whole country has this. We got limited capacity remaining on the current distribution grid, right? It's pretty well tapped out, and we've been living off of the capacity that was built into it from the 70s when nuclear was going to save the world, and now it takes 5 to 7 years. We can, I guess, as Bruce mentioned earlier, the speed to market for demand is faster than speed to market for generation. Speed to market for generation is faster than speed to market for greenfield transmission. So it all comes down to transmission being the long pole for permitting, siting, so forth. We're doing a lot of work with looking for advanced conductor and things to improve that, but it's a slow go.
Thanks, Roger. I'm going to stick with you for the next question as we kind of take it from the generation side. You already started to go there with the grid considerations. Obviously, like a lot of infrastructure in North America, the grid is deteriorating, certainly showing age. And add to that wildfires, hurricanes, natural events, depending, in different areas of the country or of the continent. With that increased focus on resilience, on customer reliability, in addition to the load growth, how is grid planning evolving?
So I actually talked to Greg Henrich, Brian's peer that has that group, to help me with this question. But we're looking at trying to run old units longer, in addition to the builds that we had planned for replacements, which strains capacity out of the generation hubs. Working at ways to run both of them, or either or, to ensure we do have the capacity. We're looking at restarting some old units that we had previously closed, particularly older gas CTs, that we will have them for peak days like yesterday and today. We were at our edge yesterday and today with the heat. But looking at all of those things and planning for smaller, more distributed generation where we don't have to put so much load on a single line. And this is where, in my notes, I had any opportunities we can to use new conductor and our advanced conductors. Our first projects for that's going to be at Kingston. Most of you know where the ash spill happened. So we're replacing that plant with a combination of combined cycle and aeroderivative, and now looking at using advanced conductors and things for reconductoring lines so we can hold coal online for a while and run the gas plant, especially through commissioning, because we can't have no capacity from there and support Knoxville and East Tennessee. So it's a challenge. No matter how you slice it, the grid is the challenge, and siding's getting harder. Social media makes it harder. Getting the correct information out versus opinion, and it's our guys work hard at getting the information out and getting to the landowners before social media does, and the like.
Thank you, Roger. Paul, anything more? Just your perspective.
Ontario Power Generation is a generator, but we're doing lots of work in collaboration with Hydro One and the Independent Electricity System Operator to plan what's best for the province, what's best for the people of Ontario. Placing generation along existing corridors, upgrading existing corridors is of course the low-hanging fruit. At some point when you move north and you want to develop, say, hydro in the north, you're looking at new transmission lines. Maybe a little more space, a little easier to do for us, but again, it comes down to, again, people, partnerships with vendors who can build those lines, and then the communities the lines run through.
Okay, thank you. We're kind of before we move on to another topic, I certainly welcome anybody on the panel, but I really, more importantly, want to welcome those in the room who might have questions.
I'll go. I'm not going to add to the transmission discussion here. It's clear, a lot of you are in this industry, the problems are well described. We here at the ETE Forum, that's all of you, not just us up here, our job is to help figure that out. And we all play different roles depending on who we work for. So this forum works if you all participate, right? So we can move on for this question, but as we're going through each of the different topics, it's really important that you start thinking of questions and don't be shy. You know, I know Paul can go a little off sometimes, but he has been cautioned not to be too hard on anybody asking a question. So the alternative is Bruce and Rod, great Bill, are in the audience, and they're going to come and tap you on the shoulder. So if you're not going to put your hand up, we're going to tap you on the shoulder. So this is a participatory. We extended this time frame so that we could have a conversation.
I'll make a point about transmission before we take the question. We heard yesterday from Brian Williams that gas is as the bridge to the future of I think it was fusion. No, it's not fusion. New nuclear, whatever's there out in the future. But gas was the bridge. In Ontario, at least, and I'm sure in other jurisdictions, gas pipelines haven't been expanded for some time. We're leaving gas behind. So when we talk about, hey, we want to build new CTs or combined cycle plants, well, wait a minute, the gas system's tapped out. So it's not just transmission lines for the electricity system. If we want to bridge with gas, we got to build new gas infrastructure. And for how long is that gas going to be there? Right. So that's another, I'll say, constraint or obstacle we've got to overcome.
And with all very much the same challenges of siting and public engagement and everything else. So.
Same thing.
It is. We've got one greenfield project going now that, well, it's brownfield construction site, but it's greenfield gas. It's 30 miles. We were held up 6 months in court fighting a stay, and it was following a 500 kV corridor.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like it was undisturbed, and we still were tied up in court. As Brian probably said yesterday about interveners that were not any of the affected landowners. The other site, I've got 122 miles of pipe to build.
Yeah.
But we're lucky enough, somewhere north of 100 miles of it is in an existing right-of-way that conveniently had dual line rights. So it's still a lot of new pipe, but we don't have to fight all of the fight.
Yeah, I think.
Yes, so Kurt Graham with Fluor. Is one of the answers maybe to a constrained distribution grid more behind the meter power and more smaller scale electric production, especially given backlogs on big turbines and all of that?
We're seeing lots of behind the meter work, primarily to shave the peak demand, so you can shave your demand charges. In Ontario, it's one of the reasons why, like, our last peak was 27,000 megawatts in 2006. I think it was June 2006. We haven't reached that peak again yet, but it's from two things primarily. One, behind the meter generation and storage, and also we're able to shed demand. So there's contracts that can you cut your demand. So that's why we haven't seen the new peak yet, but the new peak's coming. But I agree with you, that's definitely an opportunity that people are looking at and putting in place to save that demand charge.
I think we've got a question over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you very much. Going back to your gas, you were talking about gas pipelines, that infrastructure needs to be addressed. When that is done, is it possible to use whatever is done for hydrogen in the future? I'm not an expert in this area, so I'm just wondering. I hear people say, oh, well, if you do the gas, you could use that infrastructure for hydrogen if and when that comes, but I'd just be curious to hear what you say on that.
The gas pipeline operators, hydrogen, well, technically the actual pipe, yes, nothing else works.
Yeah.
The hydrogen molecules are much smaller. None of the gaskets work, none of the seals work, none of the compressors work. The pipe maybe, except for the corrosion issues. So generally speaking, not as it exists today. It takes a significant amount of change. One other thing I'll comment to the previous question in the distributed resources. My transmission operator peer in the next building next to me would say, yes, distributed generation is a great thing. To the person that has to find a site and fight the fight to get that site, no. I want to build a 5,000 megawatt site one place and pump that stuff out on transmission lines. So it's finding that balance between those distributed versus how many times are you going to live that.
I have a question back here, way in the back. So, kind of tagging on what everybody is saying, I think the importance and challenges of building these facilities, has to be an eye on how we future-proof those builds and what technologies are coming. And I'm curious from your standpoint, what would you consider those levers or accelerators to the progress that you need to see? I'm thinking particularly of manufacturing via modularization. Are there other levers or catalysts that can help you build what you need today, but then future-proof for what we need to build tomorrow?
I can go first.
Sure.
A couple of things we're doing. We built some 3-unit simple cycle sites using F-class technology. The distance between them spacing, there's nothing behind the stacks. If we need to go back in the future and make those combined cycle, we can get 50% more power with basically no more gas burned. If that kind of goes into your future proofing. The combined cycles that are under construction now have, if you believe the OEMs, they say they can burn 50% by volume of hydrogen, but that's 5% heat input, which you guys probably all know that it's a trickle, but we are including the pipe sizing and the blending station. If that source ever becomes available, we don't have to go back into the machine. We can do the work to the outside edge. A couple of things we're doing there to spend a little bit more money up front to have that capability if it ever proves to happen. So a couple of those things we are doing, but not a lot other than that.
Yeah,
Do you have anything?
Ted Blackman with Constructex. I'll apologize in advance if the question's maybe a little obtuse, but one of the things that strikes me very much as a pinnacle change in the industry is historically, and even now, we're considering the power utilities as the owner-operator, which indeed it is. But it's very interesting that the peaks in demands that are coming are really driven, in essence, by other owner-operators, your customers, which, growing up as a kid in the US, you just kind of think electricity's always there. But suddenly, the keynote that we watch with the resurgence in manufacturing, but also this lifting up of the data centers and EVs, and it's driving a demand where, as an owner-operator, you've got other owner-operators that are directly your customers. And so has any of the owners' representatives up there thought of that aspect of a collaborative model of engagement across the owner-operators to make an extended owner-operator forum in and around planning out strategically for the nation, how we're going to beat other nations and simultaneously put protections in place that, frankly, because of all the freedoms we've had historically, just don't exist with our grid system, which is, if you read certain sections of the media, it's fragile and at risk. And if I understand what the big risk is, we just don't have monitoring in place for it. And so both from the standpoint of the demand that you're seeing with owner-operators, how many owner-operators that are the users of the grid and the power are here in this forum? Maybe a few hands, but maybe not enough. So that aspect of the planning strategically not being limited to yourself as an owner, and then question two, what's being thought of in terms of how we're going to protect the grid going forward as a strategic asset?
So let me take that. And I'm not a utility guy, Ted, but that's a great question. And that's the reason this forum exists, is to bring all of the industry, other operators, utilities, other folks that run generation on their site, that are planning to run generation on their site. The problem is so large, and we're in a race. North America, we're in a race against other parts of the world. And so the opportunity is so large that one of the founding notions of this forum, and it's purposely called a forum, and it's not called a CBA, and it's not called a committee. The purpose of this forum is to bring all of us together to have these conversations. And there's lots of other places in the industry where you guys come together, right? We're not looking to duplicate that. We're looking to add to that so that there is an integrated approach to running this race as fast and as efficient as we can as the North American community here.
We're partnered, I won't say partnered, but we have collaboration agreements with Bruce Power. Both operate similar designs. Bruce Power's looking at they got Bruce A, B, they're looking at Bruce C. We're looking at SMRs and then at future nuclear at Wesleyville. So we're working with Bruce Power. We're working with Southern Company and TVA closely on, particularly on the SMR and the SMR technology. So to TVA's point yesterday, they didn't want to spend the money up front, but we are. So we're happy to collaborate. Really that industry, particularly the nuclear, but I think broadly the electricity industry, it's a very collaborative space. And we win together. And in particular on the nuclear side, you win together, you lose together. That's well understood, and the collaboration is at a very high level. So I don't think, I think there's enough forums. Yeah. I think everyone knows we need each other to get this done. And then what I see in Canada is the feds are putting money into the process. The province is championing new nuclear, new generation, battery storage, all these technologies. So I see there's a lot of good momentum in all areas to make that happen. And what you're talking about, I'm not sure we need another forum, but that collaboration is happening.
Yeah, and so this is not meant to be that industry forum with the utilities or with the transmission groups or the pipeline groups. We're a forum that grows up out of CII, and we have a particular capability as a group of professionals to bring those best practices to the table. And so, but at the same time, a lot of you folks, because I sit on these other industry forums, and I see a lot of folks in this conference also on those forums. So again, this is all about connecting what we do here at CII into that business discussion, not the engineering discussion necessarily, not the regulatory discussion, but the business discussion from the point of how can we facilitate, plan, and execute these projects better once we figure out what the right order and sequence is. And it's clear on the critical path. We've got to get a better handle on the transmission. And that's what we do well as an industry. We figure out those critical paths, and we all have a duty to work together, as Paul mentioned, to raise the bar so that we run this race as North America faster than our competitors in Europe or in Asia.
So that's a good segue to the next topic. And, you know, I'll say, Michael, as I ask the next question, if you feel you just answered it, we'll
Sure.
move on to somebody else. But it really is along those lines is, you know, what does this group, CII, provide to the conversation in terms of project delivery? So we want to talk about how we can disrupt project delivery. Did I miss it?
Yeah, can you hear me
Oh,
okay?
yeah.
This is Fernando with ConstructX.
Okay.
I have a question because it came up while you were all talking about resources as a challenge, and also you also talked about data centers as a customer. So if we look at resources as a challenge, you know, we're talking the quantity of resources, the capabilities and competencies of those resources, onboarding into the industry, right, and the training and education of all that, right? All that pertains to it. And I sit in the same data center forums, and they talk about the exact same thing and the same challenges. So how are we going to address that? Is there going to be a resource reduction strategy that's going to have to take place, maybe through a lot of project delivery type styles? But I think that is a real serious problem because they're going to create a huge demand for resources, as will be the commensurate part of the power generation side of the equation. Because as their demand goes up, your demand is going to go up, right? And that's going to be a challenge. So if we can, I don't know if we can't probably address that today, but I think that should be a key topic worth conversing there.
So in a nutshell, Fernando, your question is the people piece? Yeah. I mean, if that's actually on our agenda, so I'll just jump to it now. I mean, Mike, we had you teed up if you want to take that one first.
Sure. Just to make sure, are we talking about team structure or human factors?
Well, you want me to, I will read the question that we had, and we'll see how it segues with Fernando's as well. It's what is really going to take, to create that resilient workforce, one that is scalable, adaptable, can deliver, in the face of the challenges of, multiple, demands that are shortages there, but also just the shifting demands of, the next generation that we're likely to see.
So I guess first, wherever Dan's at in the room, I just heard two good nuggets come out of this. Is to your point of it sounds like that's a good challenge for everybody in the room to bring a friend September next year. And then as far as to really build a resilient workforce, that's not going to come from a wage war, right? Like we've had some conversations earlier about just the increasing cost to get great people and the need for senior people experience to come in. And none of us are going to benefit from them shifting around between us, and nobody's going to win that. Somebody's going to win tomorrow, and we're all going to lose down the road. So I think what it really takes is it's going to take all of us chipping away at a really big problem. Something that Burns McDonald did a couple of years ago is we opened a training facility for our non-union craft, right? In the last 2 years, we put 1,300 great people through that and invested in them just as much as we do degreed positions, right? Career pathing, mapping, giving them a pathway to get the next raise, to get to the next skill level. And I haven't seen it done quite like that before, that intentionality and that investment in people for those positions, right? And I think that's going to help build that resilience workforce. And that's where, when I hear workforce, I'm thinking about craft labor. But that applies to every role, right? That intentionality and effort behind it. I think the other major piece is visibility. I know that looking around, that's something that I very much appreciate when others do, and we're investing a lot in, and trying to be transparent with others, is of the visibility of what our capacity is. Our people capacity is what it all comes down to. How full are they? And ultimately, it's less about whenever the bid hits the street, can we staff it, and more so about having a dialogue with good partners. That's what this forum's all about, right? Having good open dialogue with partners about what is the work, when do the right people with the right skill sets have capacity for that work. And I think it'll help us, in combination with a lot of other training and development, get as much done as we can with the limited resources that we have. We're going to be behind for a while.
That was a great talk on demographics earlier today. The one piece I grabbed onto is the people we need to build this new generation and the transmission and both distribution, large-scale transmission, gas transmission. they're in that last demographic group, right? We all heard that this morning. That age range is from 20 years old down to 5. They're still in school. They're just starting school. We're not the only industry competing for them, right? It's competition out there. We're working with Ontario Power up in Ontario and our First Nations group with kids in grades 6, 7, and 8 to convince them that there's a career path in construction and project management, and you have to meet them where they are. I mean, I can't take one of our project managers and talk about events, work packaging, and lean construction, but we can go in and help them build a picnic table and help them plan to go and buy the wood and take them to the local Home Depot to buy the wood. So again, collectively, as we have these discussions, and you know, everybody on this stage, our firms are all doing something like this, but that talk this morning, and I've been in many of these conferences over the last couple of years, the people we want to build that capacity that we're going to scale up into by 2030, they're still in school. And we have to go and compete and convince them to join our industry.
Yeah, I think it's again about partnerships and people. We're partnering with the unions. That's important to develop the future trades. We need to partner long-term with our vendors either in the factories or the EPC vendors to ensure that they have robust development programs and that they have a long enough work program with us, a consistent work program that we can bring the new people in and develop them through our work program. So as an owner, there's a responsibility there to ask questions when you're developing a stream of projects. Well, how are we developing people? Not just our people, but your people too. So it takes all of us doing, as Michael's done, getting in there early, bringing people on board, and again, both with the engineering companies, the construction companies, and the owners.
Right. 2 blocks down, the conference I've been in is literally trades and labor. And big topic the last 2 years is how to get more of those guys into the trades. How do we get them into apprenticeships? How do we get them convinced in middle school that's a pathway to earning? The Tennessee Secretary of Labor was there introducing a program where they're looking at introducing a program to get kids that age out of foster care when they're emancipated immediately at 18. What's their path tomorrow? And she introduced that this week. Sounds like a great program. They're looking for employers to bring those kids in, and the state will pay their salary, but they want to bring them in 15, 16, 17 years old and work summers so that they have that path. Just another idea. But there's a lot of brainstorming in that conference that's been going on the last 2 or 3 years of how to get more people in the trades.
And Mike, you made a good point. It's really not the time to just buy talent. You got to be developing your talent from the ground up. And just buying it, you're not doing the industry any favors.
Right. And internal to us, we can control our piece of what's going on in the valley. We are trying to stagger projects about a 1-year start. We used to do one project, run it to the end, do another project. But we're trying to stage our projects so that we don't peak 2 of our projects at the same time in our territory, much less in the same region. Yeah. So.
Another question, if I could follow up with the resource one. Yeah, you were talking about trade resource. I think that's important. I think we need to think about engineering resources, procurement. Your supply chain has resources which do engineering and everything else. Anywhere along that line represents a source of risk because I don't have a qualified engineer, or I don't have a qualified buyer, or they're not operating according to some procedure, and all of a sudden I have a missed bolt spec. I have equipment out there that has to get replaced, right? So I think it's going to be a much, much deeper challenge, right, that we can address in this kind of environment effectively if we put our minds to it. We have to look at every one of those little risk points, including our engineering, right? because you're still competing against the other industries, whether it's oil and gas, data centers, process. They all want the same folks. And if I want a 2-month-old engineer out of college working on my stuff, without support, I'd be a little concerned.
Yeah. So the other industries, Fernando, that are designing and constructing, there's an opportunity to work together with them to streamline. That's not our real competition. Our real competition is healthcare, insurance, banking, lawyers. They're taking the lion's share of the young people that we need to attract, right? That's our competition as an industry. Not amongst ourselves, not amongst the built industry, because this year that project manager's working on a hospital. Next year that same project manager might be working on a power plant, right? We already have that in the industry, right? And so it's how do we increase the base, and we've got to go out there and compete. And we've seen some of those commercials. I think we saw some here this week, that we're an attractive industry. We're a fun industry. I started my career in IT, and I spent the first 20 years in IT, built a lot of projects. You know how much of an IT project you can see from when you're standing down on the street? Nothing, right? Our industry, you can point to what you've built. Yeah. I forget who I was talking with. We were walking past the Bridgestone Center there, and that arching, beautiful curve over the front doors there, right? Somebody put up that structural steel. Somebody put that skin on there. Somebody designed that. And as an industry, we can be proud of that, and individuals are. That's the message we have to get out to all those folks that today aren't choosing to come into project management, engineering, construction, et cetera.
Okay. I'm going to move to project delivery. So first, going to take this to you, Michael. And again, unless you've already covered it, just give me a head nod. Time pressures drive traditional durations of projects to be cut in half. How is the rapid pace of construction changing capital, project delivery, and front-end planning?
I'm going to give a brief answer here. I want to hear from the room, because that's what this room does, right? We're all here about how do we make projects better, faster. Bruce Long, you're sitting out here somewhere in the audience with the mic. At Southern, they're in the middle of planning to build a number of new combined cycle, simple cycle gas plants to handle the short-term transition that Paul was talking about. Dan, we were in a session as we were planning for this, talked about it took almost 7 years from concept to first electron at DTE 10 years ago. The timeline that you're facing, that Bruce Long's facing, is 2 to 2.5 years now. So if we don't change the way we plan these projects, and we don't, within the project world, we don't control it all, but if we don't change that, if we don't figure out how to stop that serial process and that rework, and rework happens, right at the beginning from procurement and engineering and construction. There's a ton of rework we do because we're not organized efficiently. And so that's what advanced project delivery is about. And I'm going to let others speak to advanced project delivery, because we got a group of experts out there in the room.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I got keyed up. Thanks. Yeah, so I think I've heard a lot of people say, meet you where you are, and the first thing is understanding exactly where we are, right? Being honest with ourselves. A question that comes to mind for me before I even talk about advanced project delivery is, like, what is the overall feeling of CO2 abatement versus this here and now energy need? And will there be a recoaling? I have that question. That was a question that isn't about advanced project delivery, but if we're all talking about the future and we're talking about the bridges and we're talking about all of the barriers, it's like, Well, there's been a huge transformation, and we'll call it energy transition, but I look at it as energy mix. Because if you add everything all together, we still don't have enough. So it feels a little bit scary to me that we're talking about turning things off versus turning everything on. And then looking at the projects that we actually need, what is the simplest way to get there? Advanced project delivery is about cycle time reduction. And if we think of cycle time reduction to first electron, how do we get there? And then what are the risks and rewards of each of those opportunities? But I think that, you know, it's pretty clear right now. I don't think that we have the luxury to be turning off ways of making power. I think what we need to do is think there's the long-term vision of being 100% clean, but that's a really hard place to get. I'd like to talk about advanced project delivery, just saying one thing: quality in station. You talked about defect management. We don't check often enough. We don't find out until it's been shipped to site. We don't find out until it's being commissioned. We don't find out until the third-party inspector finds it. So advanced project delivery to me isn't about adding a bunch of new advanced technologies. It's actually about, the first thing is the art of subtraction. Take away the things that aren't creating value. Increase your speed to market. Understand that defects are the mother of all wastes, because that rework cycle, it kills us, it kills our time, and it's a time vampire. It steals our resources. Cutting a pipe apart, running a wire twice. If we don't have those resources, we don't even have the people to do the work. So we got to get really crisp on how do we make it simple like Lego, so that even the lowest common denominator, the untrained workforce that's coming out there, can do this simply and easily, and also know, as they're doing it, have I done it to the standard that it's required, versus allowing somebody else to find down the road, and in some cases losing 6 months.
Trevor, 40 years of CII, almost a little more than 40 years with the lean folks. We've figured out advanced project delivery. The issue is we haven't implemented it, right? We've got islands, and that's what I want to hear from you folks, that we have islands of owners and suppliers becoming brave enough to try that. We did our first industrial IPD project with OPG that kicked off in 2019, and we're now into the middle of the 4th of 8 units in that program. But I'd like to hear from an advanced project delivery from this forum, from you all, who's doing it? Who else is doing it? Who's taking that leap forward, and what's your experience in taking that leap forward?
You know, I'll just, to Trevor's point, one of the things we're working on standardization-wise is I've created a HALO, we call it HALO program, Hydro Asset Life Extension and Optimization program, because I was doing a bunch of these small hydro projects, redeveloping the sites, and it was like the first time, every time we were doing a site, the first time we'd ever redeveloped a site. And so I said, that's it. We're standardizing this thing, we're putting it into a program. Halo's cool, so we get a nice logo. And so we put the program together, and we were doing a procurement on one project. So we have now we have standards, technical standards, training standards, what people need to know, the team, the contracting strategy. We were contracting for one site, a larger site. We had two successful bidders. The one won out, but they were very comparable bids. So I went to my supply chain and said, why can't I use this company to start working on that project through early contractor involvement? And so for us, normally it's a 2 to 3 year cycle to get something to site. We were under a year working with the standard approach, the new standards, a small team, and the engineering company and the construction company working together. Under a year, they're at site building it now. So that's the sort of thinking that needs to happen. It would have been easy for supply chain to go, oh no, you can't do that. We've never done that before. But they didn't. They said, hey, that's a good idea. The bids are comparable. Let's not waste their effort that they put into this project. We'll send them over and do that project. And then I can't remember who mentioned it, but to try to get the projects to roll into one another so that you can leapfrog the teams and they're gaining that experience. Not just the owner gaining experience, but darn, the contractor gaining experience. Nothing worse than having to train up new contractors time and time again for the same type of project. So those are the things practically that we're working on, but I'm sure there's other ideas around more advanced project delivery than that.
Yeah, I'll share a little experience I had. As you know, I tried to, on Monday we had that little CBA talk, and part of that was defining what advanced advanced project delivery was, right? So we discussed that, and I see one of the big disconnects is understanding what are the principles you're trying to really achieve on a project. You know, hey, constraint-free work, right? Some more optimized throughput, right? People working together harmoniously, synchronization of work. All these things we talk about, but we don't look at the how we're going to get delivered, because as soon as we can come together, even in an IPD, and I'll give you a little story about an IPD. About how well it can work or not work. But the fact is, if you're going to have that and you're going to look at these methodologies that should apply to that to achieve that, we sometimes see that it moves from, oh, this is a great idea, let's shake hands, let's build those transactional contracts, and then we just behave the way we always behave. So I think there's a huge opportunity to start taking away from, okay, if we're really going to do this, move away from transactional agreements all the time. I mean, you have to have transactions, of course, but into these more integrated project type approaches. And I've seen it work, very well. In fact, one of the first IPD-ish, it wasn't even IPD at the time, but we had a strong owner and we had a whole supply chain that came together, worked together, looked at how they were going to deliver the different packages of work and the sequence of work and how it was going to get optimized over this whole time. And this was a real fast 12-month project. Well, it just so happens as they were into it, about 7 months into it, one of the suppliers had a major problem. This is what I was to deliver is going to be a month late. And so what this team decided to do was not do workarounds because they had a good plan. They actually demobilized off the job, except for core management, and when that product came back into place, they resumed the plan and still finished 2 months early, right? So it's the discipline of knowing that your plan needs to work and not panic and fragment because that's the death of a job, right? And looking for people to blame. They all knew the trade-offs, and they still all did very well because of this type IPD approach. And in other ways, in other instances, people get on the IPD bandwagon, and I did this in healthcare, and you go in and they're wondering why the project is not progressing because they lost their way, right? So this oversight, assurance, this lean thinking approach, had to come back into play, educate and train the people that were supposed to be doing it, how it's supposed to be done right, right? And these are lean applications, work packaging, IPD type applications. They had the same thing. But sometimes you have to go in and actually retrain and get back on track because you get comfortable with the fact that you signed a document, you're all supposed to behave the same way, but you don't deliver that, right? So there's this, I want to call it a little bit of the oversight assurance component that every project needs to have to ensure that what you signed up for, you deliver it, and we're going to encourage people, pull people through that. So there's all this lean thinking, there's this packaging strategy, there's IPD-ish, there's material management kind of components that all have to come together to do that, right? And I've seen it work, and of course there's a lot of other stories, but I'll just stop there, otherwise I'll talk too long.
And since Michael prompted me, I guess I'll say a few words. For us, it's standardization. Back to what Paul was saying, buy that long lead equipment really early and buy it all the same. We used to love to engineer the heck out of everything and make it very unique, but those days are over. You go buy the parts and pieces you need and you design around that, and that's true for generation, transmission, distribution, everything. You know basically what you need, go buy it and you engineer around it, and that way you hedge against some of those pressures. The other thing I'll say is modularization has a huge potential because you push those craft hours into the shop, you create more efficiency as you create repetition, and you gain more speed through that repetition. The hard part of all this is how do you change your front-end planning process to adapt to this? That's the real crux or challenge we're having is how do you reinvent your product delivery process to match this new reality?
Well, while we're changing the mic, one of the things we're doing along that, we're buying equipment well in advance of even having a site selected. Our IRP identifies the need for megawatts. We're buying those megawatts even ahead of having a site, because all the pressure to shorten the life cycle of projects, that is impossible when lead times are triple what they were 5 years ago. So we're buying transformer slots and turbine slots, and I can't tell you what the voltage output is that I need on that transformer yet, but we're buying that space in line to be sure we get it to meet where our IRP says we need power. So not exactly the high-tech answer you're looking for, but the actual duration to do the project is longer. I hear all the discussion, but the actual process is longer. So to change our process, we're rewriting our internal projects process of in what stage of that project can I buy long lead material. And to do that, we've had to really change our internal appetite for taking on risk, because I'm obligating millions and millions and millions of dollars when I commit to buying a turbine that I don't know where I'm going to put it, right? And I may have to store it, or I may have to slide it in time, which doesn't come free either, whether it's time value of money, greed, or just the opportunity to send me a change order. If I change it from a 27 delivery to 28 delivery, I'm paying more for it, even though I've already paid a lot of money that they get the benefit of. So there's things out there that are pushing us along, and we're having to be innovative of how to keep it at least reasonably in time for when we need it.
Yeah, I would just say when I look at the projects that we've done that are fast track and successful, you know, there's features about them. One is they FID the project at FEL1, that they're going to build this project. So they will release, you know, long lead equipment at the time that's right to meet their construction date. Two, if they're doing that, there's a little bit of flexibility about, okay, what's the design capacity of this unit going to be? If you say, these are my prime drivers, this is what I'm buying, and you say, okay, you tell me what the capacity is going to be when we get there, instead of, you know, turning this around to, well, you got to guarantee me this number and do whatever you want. All of that and all of the stage gating of, should we cancel this project, it creates huge recycles, and it creates a whole bunch of work that is regret work, because you're only doing it to pass a stage gate instead of to execute a project. And I think if we actually look back to the way we delivered projects 30 or 40 years ago, and we could say, oh yeah, those guys, they didn't have any of these tools, but they could build projects fast, and they could build them that they would start up. And part of the reason was, from day one of the project, they were pushing towards detailed design, they were pushing towards how are we going to execute this in the field. And I think to a certain extent, all the stage gating that we've done, and all this taking, you know, 20 projects and using this stage gate project to narrow it down to 2 or 3, costs us time. So, and it costs resources, right? And okay, that's very necessary when you need to deliver the right project at a very, you know, the minimum cost for that project. But if you already know you need to build this project, and you gotta build it, we need to move past that. And I think when we see projects that have done that said we're FIDing, we're going, those projects are wildly successful.
Yeah, one of the reasons that really works is by making that decision to go early, is it allows you to have that pool of money. You know, traditionally out there, organizations have very little money for that front-end planning until they get permission to spend money, and so they do it on a shoestring, and then they got a race. Whereas if they could have pulled some of that spend earlier into the cycle, and this is what advanced project delivery is all about. It's all about the ideas you've heard up here. It's all about AWP, but it's pulling that spend earlier into the cycle to lock in the equipment, bring the supplier form to the table to discuss the options early, and do that early value engineering, right? That's what advanced project delivery is all about. Who here is aware of the project that Elon Musk built? He stood up his Grok data center.
In Memphis?
Memphis.
Yeah, in Memphis.
Oh, yeah, painfully.
Painfully, very
Painfully aware.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, right? Think about that though, 9 months. 9 months, he turned it on.
400 megawatts.
Yeah, 9 months from start to go. Took a lot of shortcuts. He's going to pay premiums. He's going to pay some lawsuits. He's got to redesign his power. He's got to redesign his water. But the time to market was the business reason, and he had the money to make that investment. And again, it's because he's in a race. He made his business decisions based on time and the fact that he was in a race. And he knew he was going to spend that money. But it was, you know, it's much easier when you control the company, right? It's much easier than having to report to a board and regulators and all that. But that's what we have to bring. That's what this forum's all about. We have to bring the regulators. We should have a regulator or two sitting in this forum and bring this discussion along. And that's why we're sitting here today. We're sitting here to play our part and then go out from this forum and feed into the other forums. Steve Cabano and I are at the ECC conference in September talking about this. And then I'm with Fernando at a data center conference. There's 4 or 5 of us from CII that are at that data center conference. And it's bringing what we do here at CII into that business discussion. It's not a discussion about advanced work packaging. It's not a discussion about lean methods. We do that here in the business of CII, but it's taking that capability and bringing it into these other forums so that we collectively as the industry can say, how do we literally cut these projects down by 50% from point of idea to first electron?
So,
just want to make a comment from the supply chain perspective.
Can you speak up?
Sorry, just want to make a comment from the supply chain perspective, what Roger was saying earlier, making your commitments early like that. I think the best way to do that is you change the mindset from a project mindset into a program mindset. And then you get maybe overlapping or some budget freedom where you don't see the risk as painfully, right? If it's a program where you know you're going to repeat projects, that's, I think that's kind of what you were getting at. Like
I'm not on the panel, I'm just moderating, but you're speaking my language. There's been great discussion about supply chain standards, process, adherence, and performance, and collaboration, right? And I guess just further to, the collaboration, I'm going to come to you, Mike, here. What's the shift of project teams, the way they're structured to make sure that, that help deliver at the speed, that's demand?
Yeah, so I've seen a couple things. First, I'll ask a question, Roger, just because you're sitting next to me. Think about the last project org chart you saw, right? It's on that piece of paper. When's the only time during the project that's typically updated?
At the start.
At the start, and then somebody leaves to go work on something else, and so you change the name in the box, right?
Right.
I found it very effective to treat it like sequence drawings. Like we've been talking about early engagement and planning, there are distinct phases throughout the life cycle of projects, and that team does change. And typically that org chart, there's multiple of them by each company. That's not really a partnership then, and you're not really focused on, that's just showing who reports to who's cutting the, determining raise at the end of the year, and that's not really important when you're talking about, when you're focused on deliverables and speed and execution and quality of work. One thing that I've seen that's been very helpful is look at that through that lens and start that at the beginning of project execution with everything else that you planned to go through the various phases of project delivery. So that you have intentional working into your stage gates or whatever those look like for you, but working that in so that you're intentionally going back and saying, what's the team look like now that we're entering this new phase? And I would argue that most of the time I haven't found it too helpful to even, if people are engaged at the project level, they know everybody else, they know who they work for, it's not that important. And it seems to be that's the major driver of what we look at is we look to each organization to show me your org chart, but look at it org agnostically as, what are we trying to accomplish? This is my siting team, right? Who are all the individuals that need to be on this team? Who's the one person that's actually accountable for driving those deliverables, hitting those milestones? What's their actual support chain, not just all the way up to executive sponsor, right? What's their actual support chain? Is the accountability to get those things done actually delegated to that team to cover the 99%? And when something escalates, are they actually supported properly? Not does it go all the way up the chain, and oftentimes, you know, you see it land on an agenda for a steering committee or something that meets quarterly, and then there's questions that come back, and then next thing you know, you've lost your 6 or 9 months to the critical path, right? And cost of money alone, it's lost you millions.
Right. To offset that, we've tried to do, especially when you get to pure execution and you're building out that site team, is build that peer group. Who's the civil engineer, the civil superintendent, and the owner civil representative? Hey, you three you are the first task at solving the problem. It doesn't need to come all the way to me, go across to the contractor, and all the way back down to that guy that you were walking with when you found the problem.
Yeah.
When you two find the problem, call this engineer. If you can't solve it, elevate. But setting up those peer groups, some companies call them zipper plans, whatever, set up that peer group and challenge them to solve the problem before they elevate is what we've tried to do recently on a couple of jobs, and it's successful.
I saw one recently, the way it was drawn on a piece of paper reminded me of if you're making a seating chart in a room, in a workshop, right? The project team came together, and those circles were around functions. And it was the people who were going to achieve that thing. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. And that approach, again, bringing it back to advanced project delivery, that approach has been tried, proven, formalized, and well described coming out of the collaborative contracting world, whether it's alliancing or IPD or I2PD or progressive design build. And you know, we call them PIT teams, project integration teams, right? And they're by discipline. And it's not just engineering discipline, they're by project discipline, whether it's engineering, construction, quality, regulatory, licensing. And those PIT teams are designed specifically, as Mike says, to achieve a particular task and hand it off to whoever's waiting for that task and to receive from that other PIT team that's doing the precursor work. And so we keep relearning those methods where, and part of this forum is to take what we've learned at CII and the Lean Construction Institute and take that learnings and not relearn it and just apply it. It's well described out there. And we're now at a point where if we wanted to cut that cycle time down by 50%, as Paul's saying, once you've formed your teams, now you have to also form your methods, your work processes that understand the concept of a PIT team, understand the concept of AWP, understand the concept of Lean, right?
Up here in the front.
So the discussion is very focused on what we're doing today.
Yep.
We talked about the bridge plan for gas generation. OPG's got a good plan, TV's got a plan, Southern's got a plan. You were talking about project delivery. How are you going to apply project delivery to SMR or baseload nuclear again?
So it's happening today. And Paul, you can jump in here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, our SMR program, so we have, we're in the middle of building one, but it's done under an IDP contract with our vendor partners. The first one's a little different because there's a lot of cyclical development work going on as they're designing and building at the same time. But that's the structure it's been, with shared pain gain, the risk pool, everything you'd want with a standard IDP type of approach. So it is happening. Is it the best model? Well, we'll see. But it does bring people to the table. It does align cultures, and it's working to date.
Yeah. And it's the first of a program. You know, number one being successful. There's 3 more behind it. And TVA,
we're
you
in
guys
line with you.
Yeah.
We're buying in. We bought into the design technology, right?
Yep.
Of the SMR proper.
Yeah. And
The idea is, if that one works, take that exact design, build it on a new spot, not start over.
Yeah.
Not customize it to all the things that I can ask 20 engineers, get 37 opinions of which way to turn a terminal block. Cut all of that out, build it exactly like the last successful one. No redesign, build it exactly like the as-builts, is what we hope to do.
right down to using the same project delivery method. TVA's bought not only into the technology and partnering with OPG, but the IPD project delivery method. So you've gone through procurement, you've picked your partners, and you're waiting to engage as OPG.
Plows the stumps.
Exactly.
So great foundation on how to think about projects differently, do projects differently. I guess it's time to talk a little bit about tools, about automation. Real time, getting data real time, not just, the lagging indicators, but actually seeing the process and the adherence as it's going, avoiding, catching those quality issues the first time through, building on something Trevor said earlier. But also digital twins, automation, what is the space of technology, and where is that helping us in identifying projects, planning projects, executing projects?
Me.
Mike, yep.
So decisions, not dashboards. We live in a complex world doing complex projects, and we have a tendency to overcomplicate things further. The simple thing is all those things, I think, revolve around just making decisions. So I'll go backwards. Automation, right, I think is largely focused on the things that we can clear our plates of so we can focus where we actually need to focus and make decisions. And then real-time data, right? So same thing as, I think we've all been in this situation before where a project team, a group has put together all the information that's known. It's a tough decision, right? And so it gets escalated, and then there's follow-up questions, and we get more information. We're not quite certain what it is at whatever level, whatever scale. Driving towards real-time data gives us confidence to make a decision, move on, right? Like a good decision today is better than what would have been the perfect decision a month from now. And the last one, I won't use the term digital twin. I'll stay away from that rabbit hole, but I'll say modeling, right? Modeling is the same thing. Both of the automation and real-time data, I think, are things that come up in daily life, and they're small in their impacts, but cumulatively they're big. They can be big across an organization, across the team. Modeling, I think, is a little bit different in applications of, it's similar in helping navigate through change, right? I would be interested to know from a couple other folks as far as in the earlier stages, in system planning, right? That's where we've seen a lot of impact in modeling that we've helped with, in the amount of things in the queue, and the constant on-off, and the churn of studies and impacts over and over and over again. That modeling side has big impact there. I don't know if anybody else can speak better to that as far as what you've seen inside the organization. I know, not my wheelhouse, I know we've helped with some stuff in that sense, but I'd be interested to know what others have seen for modeling more in the early stages.
Yeah. One of the things we've talked about here is this advanced project delivery. It's not IT, it's not digital twins, it's not dashboards, right? It's business process. But business process can happen on a piece of paper, right? It takes longer, it takes a lot longer, and we lose the paper, and we don't number it. And so we learned a long time ago to automate business process. But if you automate bad business process, you have bad automation. So the question of the digital twins and the ability to have the Jarvis type application that comes out of Iron Man, where he's throwing stuff up. And we saw some of that in some of the videos today, right? I'm waiting for the day that that's real. But that's only good if the underlying business processes and information you get right first. What the automation does is speed that up, right? And it goes right back to what Mike said. The whole point of that automation is that you can make decisions with real-time data, whatever that decision is, whether it's progress in the field, whether it's safety, or whether it's finance. So that's part of it. And again, once you understand the business process and the automation, the complexity of the decisions we're making, just think about it, just in each of your own regions, the complexity of planning that load and all the things we have to consider in planning where we're going to build that load, when we're going to build that load. We talked about some of the issues within the bounds of the project world, but there's so many other decisions at the regulatory world, the community world. Somebody up here on stage talked about getting the right information out before social media does. And so the promise of what we see and what we spend a lot of time on is AI, as imperfect as it is today, to raise through all that detail of information, pertinent things that are going to help us make those decisions. But if you don't build the underlying business process correctly, so that the right people are getting that information, that digital twin doesn't serve a lot of value.
So just sit side by side, hey? Yeah, so in a former life, I had the opportunity of running the Future of Construction Technology program at NASA, or sorry, at MIT. Wish it was with NASA. Got to work with some of those guys though. And we always jumped to the complex solutions too quick. It was almost like, to prove that you're smart, you have to come up with something really complex. But the customer that that we were delivering to was Shell, right? And Shell was looking at this going, this is too much for me to bring into my program. And so when we started framing new technology developments, the idea was it has to hit these two criteria. You're reducing my cycle time and you're reducing my defects. If you're adding complexity, that's not a technology, that's a waste of time, right? And so, Mike, you asked a question about what can be done on the front end with simple modeling. Well, we started with terrestrial scanners, Navisworks, GeoSlam, all the stuff that takes, specialty people, specialty technologies, the logistics of sending that stuff around the world to do a feasibility study. And we had, in some cases, have to review 500 locations just to settle on the 50 locations that we're actually going to do a project in around the world, right? So in order to load those projects up, it was taking us, in a lot of cases, around 50 days to do a feasibility study on a single location. So if you can think of that, that's almost a retirement job before you've even decided where you're going to build and what you're going to build. So we said, let's think once again about cycle time reduction and defect reduction. Well, the defect is we kept citing locations that had all kinds of problems that cost lots of money, right? So what did we do? Simplest thing was teenagers with iPhones scanning above ground, things that people were already using, EML, electromagnetic location, GPS, ground penetrating radar, what's under the ground, mesh that together, throw that onto Google Maps, and then start saying, okay, that took me 5 days to have an idea of what I'm actually going to build. And I take my standardized BIM, we just move it around and see where's the easiest location to build this with the least number of conflicts, right? And that wasn't building a giant BIM, that's a 3D scan that's literally built in a few days. And we reduced our cycle time just on siting from 50 days to 5 days. And it was not trying to be the fanciest, because we probably could have come up with helicopters, rocket ships, and a whole bunch of scanning technology that wouldn't be deployed. So when we're thinking about the technologies that we're going to use, we also have to think about the simple operation of it, the cost of it, and then once again, is it netting the value of cycle time reduction and defect reduction?
Yeah, those are those process adherence measures that we sometimes forget, right? Those are the leading indicators. We tend to focus on lagging measures of, budgets and dates, but you don't get there if your processes are flowing correctly as you go. I guess, do we have a?
Oh, yeah, I apologize. I stepped out of the room for a minute. I'm not sure if it was asked or not. I heard the question about advanced project delivery, and it can get a little confusing between advanced work packaging and advanced project delivery. But if we just came to advanced work packaging for a second, which is one of the key best practices that we've seen emerge out of CII, DTE, Southern, those were two companies I know that were really involved in the early movement in AWP. But am I incorrect to say that most owner-operator power companies have not adopted advanced work packaging? And certainly then the technology side of it, I think it's kind of lightweight, and I'm wondering what's the resistance, or is that something that's in your roadmap, or have you already adopted it? And that would also be for I think the EPCs on the panel as well. Do you have a plan for advanced work packaging, and what is it?
Yeah, I've talked about this a bit, that we've, all our projects to date have typically been redeveloped, like in the past 30 years, typically been redevelopments, overhauls, even large Darlington refurbishment was $12 billion, 4,000 megawatts. You're working on existing systems, you're replacing or repairing. It's all, the work packages are kind of predetermined. It's only now where there's a lot of capital going into trying to develop greenfield construction. And so the work packaging mindsets now starting to change. So yeah, we are looking at it in more detail. Typically, we're relying on our vendor partners to have that skill set, but now, given the vast amount of projects that we have to undertake, we need to come up with our own strategy in partnership with our vendor partners around advanced work packaging, and what does that look like for those future projects. So the short answer is we're not doing it right now, but we're actively pursuing it. Yeah. Bigger project sets. Yeah.
I'd say enterprise-wide for us, I'd say it's not necessarily enterprise-wide, but it's specific to major scope types, so like our power group and oil and gas groups, like specifically for large, complex, site, vertical, expansive builds, yes. It depends on what though. Specifically, I'm in T&D. I would say if we have a fairly straightforward greenfield substation, you do the time value way of, is this pretty simple with a team that's done it 100 times the same way before, then, and they've got a rhythm already, probably leave it alone.
Yeah. I can't speak of the utilities you asked about. I'll speak of a utility I used to work for, and this may be similar to others. Part of it's a culture, right? It's the siloing we always talk about, the politics, the internal, inertia of how we got here, and having to turn that ship into a new way of working, a new behavior. I mean, to do advanced work packaging, there has to be upfront collaboration. The silos got to come down.
Right, and I guess what I call work packages is what goes to the work crew to do today. We, as an owner, don't dictate that to our EPC partners. Whatever tools they use, they use. So we drive more towards schedule and schedule, budget, quality, but how they build their work, we don't get that involved in their means and methods, and don't intend to.
Okay, just another one. Just same question, but for modularization, like offsite construction. Are you guys utilizing that type of methodology for any of your projects, including brownfield, greenfield and brownfield?
One of the things I learned was that small modular reactors are neither small nor modular.
Correct.
They're a good size. But yeah, no, we're looking at, for instance, the HALO program, we've come up with we call it an E-house. So all the protection control system, switchgear, all that goes into a module built somewhere else, dropped in off-site and connected in. Saves us a ton of time. It's climate controlled. first we got pushback from the operators, but when we showed them what it was like and that it would be a quiet space for them to work, they were pretty happy with it. So we can either drop that outside the powerhouse, because powerhouse footprint costs money, so we can drop it outside, or if there is room, we'll drop it inside the powerhouse. But that's something that we're looking at. So we are advancing modular as part of our modular construction as part of our greenfield construction program. I won't say we're there yet completely, but we are working on various items like the e-house concept.
And also standardizing that type of modular construction too, right?
Oh yeah, like that's what we can just order the same thing for the different site, you know, change some of the parameters, but it's the same box you're going to get.
Just returning to the AWP for a minute, I do think that the owners actually do need to care, and they need to care a lot. And the reason is AWP deployment early in a project, the earlier you can get it deployed in the project, the more value you get out of it. But if the owner is kind of agnostic to it, it costs more earlier in the project to do the AWP. And so if you don't allocate and force that into your project development cycle, everybody who's bidding your job will say, you know what, I can lower my cost for this bid cycle by kicking this down the road. And I've seen that happen over and over again, and projects end up not deploying AWP until late in FEED, or sometimes even into detailed design, which is too late. And the reason was because it was a competitive advantage to not include it earlier in the phase, because the client did not dictate that it had to be in those earlier phases. So I just say, you watch out for that.
It's part of our again, we have a greenfield construction initiative as we morph into from rehabilitation, refurbishments to building new. It's, again, a whole different mindset. We recognize it, so it's a box on the board. Hey, we got to deal with that.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that with an example. Unfortunately, Carl Toner left, but you know, Southern's early involvement, it was pre-COVID. And I think, you know, and it kind of goes back a little bit maybe to Paul's point, there weren't that many projects to actually apply it on, but a published, and so I'm not saying anything that wasn't published, it was published at the 2019 Advanced Work Packaging Conference. Goes right to your point. I mean, where Southern applied it was in the early planning stages, and then scoping out the CWPs, and then breaking the bigger project into smaller CWPs, and developing a master services agreement with their contracting partners, so you kind of get a scope of an overall project. But then it was an amazing result. I mean, you know, typically, back to your point, it was like early successes in oil and gas. We saw it in the productivity in the field, in contractors, but it was really owners that drove it. But what I saw as what I thought was one of the most brilliant benefits ever seen was, you know, what Southern companies experienced and published was on their first 5 projects, the bids from the contractors just went way down. I mean, no work done in the field, but compared to bids they were getting before, it was, you know, a substantial amount of return on investment because of the amount of upfront planning. And I think it ties heavily into the point, which I'm very enthusiastic about, is like, can you push that FID earlier? And even then break it down into multiple phases. And I think it's a real ripe opportunity for us to rethink the project delivery model about that FEL 1, 2, 3 to, you know, push it earlier into the planning process. Well,
just to build on that, Ted, we heard yesterday morning, or Monday morning, in the Advanced Work Packaging CBA, Jeff Ryan get up there and present numbers based on 70 projects using advanced work packaging, all to a varying degree of detail, how early they started, how intense it was, but they had 70 projects that they measured. And the productivity increase during construction was 22%. That was the number we saw Monday morning. So we're starting to get, no, we're not starting, we have real-time data, and more of that data is coming in. You think about that in the terms of how we frame this, ETE forum. We have a lot more work coming. We've got to go find the people, we've got to train the people, we've got to attract the people. But who wouldn't want a 20% improvement of productivity? That, on a 5,000 man workforce, craft workforce on a project, that's 1,000 less craft that you need for that project to hit that same timeline. That's an example of the type of business thinking here. As important and as technical, as impressive as advanced work packaging is, the real message is we don't have enough craft. And this is a way to do more with less craft. That's the message.
And I'll just say, I won't go too down this rabbit hole, but not all the projects at Southern had great results that were using AWP. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of those is the silos that Nate was talking about. And so even if you get it baked into your contract, you require it. If it's a paper tiger the contractor's not really using and they're wasting a lot of money and energy, it becomes a problem. And I'd say we were very early in the adoption cycle and probably didn't have the contracting terms down where they needed to be. And it just resulted in some tough projects. And then the executives were like, nope, we're gonna shelf this. And so now we're starting to talk about maybe resurrecting AWP and rethinking how we deployed it in a different way. So
this has been I've been getting the signal on time. So this has been a really good conversation and engaging. And I know there's a whole lot more topic. I see like 3 hands already up. With what I wanted to kind of do is bring the conversation back up and kind of just hit a few lightning round with the panel, just 2 questions, and probably not even go to everybody. First of all, to Roger and to Paul, what are I want to ask a question of just about the utility sector and the risks that people aren't talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something we haven't discussed today? And just kind of bringing some visibility to that. So if either one of you wants to start.
I think one of the things that we're seeing, we all talk about length of the time of supply chain. We all talk about supply chain. We all talk about labor. We all talk about permitting. So permitting is easing up some, but what we are seeing as we are pressing supply chain, I think everybody out there that makes power generation equipment, transformers, et cetera, they are selling more than they can build, and they are building more than they can support, and it's turning up in quality. So the equipment we are getting on receiving inspection is not what it should be, right? It's dirty, it's contaminated, it's not built to print. You name it, we've had a series of those, and we've had a series of transportation accidents. We're getting younger and younger truck drivers that are getting heavy haul or extended load permits. We've had ductwork hit bridges. We lost a diverter damper in a bypass stack. It slid down the interstate in Ohio without the truck. All of these things contribute to your rework and your delays, and they haven't been on the radar. I think we made the assumption that if I'm buying from the brand Y that I've been buying, I would get the same product I got in 21, or I get the same product I got in 18. It looks the same, it's painted the same, not the same. So that's where we're having to step up shop inspections. We're having to step up, okay, you go look at it. Is it like the drawing? We've had equipment show up that the conduit penetrations into the cubicle didn't match the foundation interface drawing from the same vendor, right? It didn't get built. What they do inside the box is one thing, but the surface of the cube has to remain the same. So we're seeing just quality issues from speed of manufacturing, right? We're having metal shavings like steam turbine where you machine the horizontal joint. They didn't take the time to clean the shavings out of the chest. And things like that we weren't prepared for. We stepped up, bought early, all those other things that we talked about, but what we're not talking about is the manufacturing process isn't keeping up. They're having the same struggles with skilled labor, qualified labor. The guy that's machining that turbine face is not the guy that did the one in 18. So that's what I think is our biggest risk, is quality of equipment received.
Great, thanks, Roger. Paul, anything else that comes to mind?
Well, we've talked about it already. It's really the leadership. We've promoted all of our top sort of project leaders into management roles and then moved them up into director roles. Now my management team of about 8 PMs, I would say 6 are good people, very knowledgeable, not experienced PMs at the moment. So to fill that gap is really in what we view as that middle management experienced PM that took me 15 years to get. Now you're looking down into the 3, 4, 5-year project leader role, project engineer role, and go, hey, are you ready to take this on? And then you're trying to bolster it with training and the executive leadership program and the LEAP program and other stuff. But they're not coming with 15 years project experience. That keeps me up at night.
So last question, and this is lightning round, so I'm looking at like 15 seconds apiece, and I'll start with you, Mike, and just work our way this way, if that's all right. What excites you most about the future of capital delivery in the energy sector?
I'll keep it really short. I just get excited about big challenges with the best people out there. Like, it's just fun to be in the trenches with the best. So I just look forward to looking back 10 years from now and at the partnerships we've made, the work we've got done.
I'm kind of in the same bucket. I'm excited about, this is the fastest load growth we've seen in a lifetime, right? I mean, this is generational. It's like it was in the 40s and 50s when we were industrializing the country. And I think just being part of that excites me. Like you said, we're expecting to near double our capacity between now and 2050, and that's a tremendous lift.
I'll echo that. I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm at the tail end of my career. This is exciting, and what's more exciting is that the industry, sessions like this, is organizing to take on that opportunity.
Yeah, it's the same thing for me. I'm excited about building big, I'll say big stuff. We'll keep it clean. Big stuff and building it better. And then the stuff that we are building is really helping society. I see it changing with our partnerships, changing communities. As Michael said, I get to see what I actually built, and maybe one day I'll have grandkids that I can show them. But for me, that's exciting. And I'm excited for the younger generation that here we are with 30 some odd years of this big build again, that they have this opportunity to see happen.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you all also for participating. This has been a really good conversation. We're not done. We're gonna give Dan a chance to help us wrap up. But if I could get a hand of applause for Dan.
Thank you.
All right, we'll exit stage left. Yeah, just get it in the next slide.
Hey, thanks again for the panel. I just got a few things to ask the group again and made some notes. So I heard a lot about regulatory risk and certainty. That's an unknown always. Generator interconnect and applications, the backlog for what that does look like and how we're going to solve that. And that's another big item. One that came out over here was the collaborative aspects for behind the meter projects, and thinking about the aspects of what is that Elon Musk. Well, he wants a triple redundancy too. So it's not just the fact that he created an island. He wants the utility to back him up with 3 lines, so that if his power system goes down, he still has power. So that's a gap as well. But it's collaborative in nature, and if we think about it. Stage gate was one item that came up. The question we'd be asking the group today is, do we need to have CI, which means incremental improvement, or do we need to re-engineer for significant improvement? We had a lot of discussions in that space, and so the slide we talk about is we've been on 2 pathways as part of the forum. One is to leverage the relationship that we have with CI and ask ourselves, how can we advocate and influence the next round of research? And the ones that are coming to mind are associated with the front-end planning and FEL. Where are we at on this stuff? And does it really map to what we're going to be building at the pace that we're doing? So that's a question that we'd be asking ourselves, and how do we influence that as part of a CII membership? And I think there's 3 projects that were being launched. I was a little bit disappointed about the SMR. I thought we'd have a little bit more discussion, because I didn't hear Paul talk about how long is it going to take to build it. And we all know that there's recent nuclear experience would say it can't be 10 years. So we need to think about possibly a PDRI that would be utilized, and I think we can go to that next piece, that says, is there a PDRI in our future that aligns to nuclear, both in SMR? But also think about the SMR technology and ask yourselves, can you do modularization with a boiling water reactor or with a PWR reactor? We know there's a lot of shielding inside of a BWR that doesn't lend itself for a lot of modularization. So just keep that in mind as we think about this going forward. The other one is how are we going to explore other avenues and other solution sets. Early in the slide deck, there was a discussion about 3X. Earlier in the conference, I had talked to somebody about, we used to use a simple budgeting process, 1,000 megawatts, $1 billion, that's $1,000 per kW for a combined cycle. It doesn't work so good at 2.4 thousand, $2,400 anymore. But if you think about an SMR, I didn't hear a forecasted price, but the rumor is it's somewhere you get 350 megawatts for $8 billion. So start doing the math. That's an awful expensive kW. So how are we going to compress both the cycle time and ultimately the cost profile? Because that one slide was very telling, both in cost and cycle time. And that's what we're really trying to achieve, is how will we, as thought partners, working together with the 4 pillars of CII, that means owners, contractors, service providers, and academics. What's that next level of simple research? But more so, what is the real disruptor? So go to the next slide a little bit. And we've talked about the exponential improvement. We tried to press a little bit about project delivery, the bridge of building combined cycle. We know how to do that because we've done a lot of them. But we're losing time. So what's changing there? And then are we really understanding the approaches? And we talked about the front-end planning. And so what can we do to improve the decision-making for the final investment decision? Because that's where some certainty starts showing up. The utilities the owners are taking the risk to saying, we're going to buy the equipment and we're going to design around it. That's a technique, that's a strategy. But at the end of the day, it's still about the processes. Michael was very strong about the processes. How are we going to be successful with the processes, and do the processes that we have today, large industrial PDRI, do they adapt to the challenge that's in front of us? We didn't really talk about transmission, even though transmission has 2 levels, above ground and below ground. So if you're doing gas, that looks a little bit differently than transmission. And then where you're going to relocate those substations. Are they going to be in the city, underground, outside, and the various sources of energy you're bringing back into the integration piece of the transmission. Plus, utilities have relationships now between ISOs or RTOs versus their own transmission. So they're all things that are around us. They're sort of like the solar system and the planets that are going around our minds, and saying, how are we going to bring this all together? And so the last, the reach out, our call to action, this affects everybody. Everybody's in the room, they're here for a reason. because they can either be a piece of it or they want to be part of the piece. And we ask the question, if not here, CII, then where are you going to seek these answers to these questions? What are the forums that you're attending, whether it be the traditional generation forums and things of that nature, or the engineering forums, because I know there's a lot of proprietary, folks that are going on there, but we really need to engage. And this group has been working for a period of time, but it's only been 5 to 7 of us. But now we want to do is to get more people engaged, because we have different viewpoints and we want to integrate, but we want to influence and advocate with CII leadership. I see the recently named executive director is listening. And so, Mr. Pappas, we need to work on what's the scope of the next round of research, and potentially through the ideation, introduce something else. But in addition to this, we are planning, we're going to do a follow-up session in September after we sort of put our notes together and our thoughts together and think about our strategy. But ultimately, what we're trying to say is what we've been doing isn't going to work. So the last line says we have to be disruptive. Elon Musk was disruptive. He was disruptive to get it to market, but he was going for the revenue. We don't have that luxury. So the question that we're providing to you today is, who in the room is the disruptor? Or what is the disruptive thought process that's going to provide our future going forward front-end planning and project delivery solutions for this forum? So I don't have, if there's any questions of me, I'll take them, but I'm usually an easy guy to get along with. But energy-wise, yeah, I was around in the 70s when we built baseload coal, okay? So I've seen that in the past, and I remember the graybeards that I worked for, and here we are again, but it's a different level of set of rules that we're dealing with, and I think that's the challenge that we're trying to navigate, is the regulatory aspects of and uncertainty. And the gentleman from TVA was very clear to say, we know the plan, but the next technology of generation it's 10 years away, right? An SMR, are you forecasting, Paul? Is it soon? Soon, okay. Sort of like fusion, right? It's always out there. So again, thank you first to Rod and the entire ETE forum and all the membership or the leadership that's been provided to this. I've made quite a few notes. I hit some of the things that were very important. The collaboration piece on third-party builds is one that was clearly an opportunity to say, if he was doing that and you're doing that, so what's the collaboration for opportunity? But I will press on the EPCs and EPCMs. You should bring your best all the time, and if the best practices are part of that, and that includes AWP, then that should be part of your submittal, not upon the owner asking for it. That's just an opinion. And the zipper plan, if you have a CII member, an owner, and an EPC as a service provider, that zipper plan should be pretty simple to figure out to do and leverage all of the best practices that we both have seen as being successful and a value proposition. So thanks again. I think we're right on schedule, time-wise. We'll go from there. So thank you.